may I have your attention? Please welcome TechCrunch senior reporter Kyle Wiggers, Josh Fabian, co-founder and CEO of Metafy, and Katelin Holloway, founding partner of 776.
Hey everyone, thanks for attending this session of Disrupt, one of the last, I believe. Hope you're enjoying the conference. I know I am. It's been a whirlwind, but it's just great to be here in person again after 3 years of virtual. There's no substitute for it. I'm glad to be joined by esteemed guests here who are going to talk about the VC startup relationship, which is, I think, a really timely topic given these weird economic times we find ourselves in. Raising is a little tricky now. Founders are thinking about venture debt when they didn't before. I'm sure a lot of questions are going to pour in regarding how do you reach out to VCs? How do you negotiate these turbulent waters? But let me introduce my speakers to begin with. We have Josh Fabian from Metafy, which is a really interesting gaming company and content company, which you'll talk about in a second, hopefully, and fill us in on. And we have Katelin Holloway, who's from 776, a fantastic venture firm. And I think a good starting point would be, why don't you introduce yourselves to the audience and just give us a brief high-level overview of what you do, where you came from. So if we could start with Josh, I think that'd be great.
Sure. So I am the CEO of Metafy, for better or worse. And what we do at Metafy is we take the best gamers in the world and we help them monetize their talent with their existing audiences through coaching, content, and competition. And we're Series A. We've raised just under 35 million to date, and we're about 2 years old.
Awesome. And then if you could.
Absolutely. So as you said, my name is Katelin Holloway. I am founding partner at venture capital firm 776. My business partner is Alexis Ohanian, and we also are 2 years old. So we are a startup ourselves.
Awesome. Well, how did you two meet? I think that gets at the topic today. Was there outreach involved, networking? Maybe Josh, you could walk us through it, and I'm sure you'll have comments to add, Katelin.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit of a winding story, so I'll try to give it as succinctly as I can. Initially, before we had any money at all, I think that first 6 months or so, I reached out wanting to talk to Alexis, but I was just cold emailing, one of thousands, I'm sure. But it was later that I actually got a little smarter about how I was reaching out to investors, and I learned the magic of a warm intro. And we kind of cut through the noise in that way. Alexis agreed to have that initial conversation with a little bit of a warning of I may not be able to do a big check, right? But I want to talk, and that's really what kicked everything off. And they ended up writing a very big check, but it was a very interesting start for us.
Yeah, and is that kind of your preferred way to be pitched, do you think?
No.
I'm sure you were.
No. This is actually, it's interesting because like I said, Metafy is 2 years old and we are 2 years old. And so this was, we're growing up together. Yeah. This is, we were at the earliest days and figuring ourselves out, and you were at your earliest days figuring yourself out. And so for us, we actually, warm intros, that's a deep topic to get into really quickly, so I'm going to tread gently just in the spirit of time and in this introductory opening question, but that's actually not our preferred path to have initial conversations. And so unfortunately, when Josh had initially emailed, and Alexis has beaten himself up about this several times, it was because we were too busy building ourselves. And the reason we said we can't write a big check is because we were still fundraising our first fund. Yeah. And so we met at a really awkward time. It wasn't as if we had an established firm with a closed fund. We were literally having more pitches with LPs than we were with potential founders at that point. And so Alexis was doing his best to manage expectations. Yeah. But Josh had emailed, and like I said, Alexis, even in the very first pitch meeting, was like, "I'm such an idiot. I'm so sorry."
It's the first thing he led with, actually.
Yes, exactly. That's standard.
Yeah.
But it was because it had come to us so many ways that he was like, I can't not look at this. Like, I can't not take this call. Also, the business was incredibly compelling. And Josh and I were just on a different stage a moment ago, so I apologize if anyone ran here very quickly. And it's going to be a repeat story. But something really cool that Metafy does, and I actually think this is, if we are talking about fundraising and a strategic advantage that founders can use in their court, is Metafy does what they call build in public. And so, in fact, I should actually let you explain it, and I'll tell you why it works.
Sure. So for us, I try to make as much public as I can, in the sense of even our investor updates. If you go onto my Twitter, you'll see in my bio, that we're building in public, and there's a link to our investor updates, and they're public, truly public. How much we're spending every month, what's going wrong, what's going right. Sometimes it's very lopsided on which one that is. But also, like in our Discord, we don't build in Slack, we build in Discord. And our community can see what we're working on, when we're working on it. They can see our team fighting amongst each other. And we do fight, we're human. But all of that transparency makes it pretty easy for investors to get an idea of what's going on and how it's going. So I do think it's an advantage for fundraising, for hiring, for journalists, you name it.
And it's also very, very different than how most companies are building. And so, as Josh mentioned, he reached out cold to Alexis. It went unanswered because we were busy building ourselves. But the reality is when we had so many signals that we couldn't not look, we also personally had been following. So Alexis and I are both parents to young kids who are gamers. Alexis and I are super, I was going to put a qualifier on that, and I'm not going to. I am not very good, but I grew up as a gamer as well. And so we had been following Josh and Metafy. And so the beauty when we finally did connect was that the meat and potatoes of the conversation was actually about our values alignment. And it was actually around how we want to partner, knowing this is going to be a very long-term relationship that we're going to build over time. I mean, minimum a decade, but hopefully, into the wild blue yonder, because you have a lot of big work to do.
Yeah.
And because of that decision to build in public, we already had, half of our, even more, boxes ticked around the business. It was super defensible. The numbers were early and really, really strong. We could see and watch their community internally and externally being responsive to things that they were doing. And so you essentially did our homework for us in that pre-diligence. So by the time we actually got on the phone call, we really were talking about much, much, much more meaningful things. For me and for Alexis, are really going to help us make that final decision around, is this the right partnership for us?
Yeah, definitely. There are some questions coming in, and I definitely want to get to those, but this build in public model is fascinating to me. The idea of putting out everything you're doing in the open on Discord of all platforms. And I'm sure, you alluded to this, it's great for the investor relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like you're really fostering a connection. There's trust there.
Yeah.
So would you mind elaborating a bit more on that? Are you honestly just putting everything out in the open?
Yeah.
Being fully transparent about roadmap and a lot of the internal things you're working on,
Yeah.
challenges too. Would love to hear more about the process.
Yeah, not everything, right?
Right.
There are things that we're working on that I would rather jump off a building than let my competitors know, right? I don't put some of those things out there. So that we do have some private channels where we'll discuss acquisitions we're looking to make and things that might be very sensitive. But most things, 90% of things, especially the bad. And the reason that's important is no one trusts corporations anymore. I don't trust corporations. Most of you, I promise, don't. So how do you create trust? Stop looking like a corporation. Look like a group of people who really give a shit. And it's amazing how evangelical your community becomes because, nobody, the only thing people like about a winner is their downfall, right? But everyone loves an underdog. When everything's out there, you quickly become an underdog because startups are shit wall to wall. Let people see it. You don't gotta lie.
Yeah. And I'm sure you have, formal check-ins and conversations with, your investors, but I'm sure they're also checking the Discord and regularly kind of staying on top of updates through there. I imagine that's just a convenient channel. You can always tell them, oh, just look at today's chat if you want an idea of progress, right, on a particular project.
Yeah, so I think something a little funny about me, maybe it makes me look like a diva, but whenever and I'm always fundraising, right? I'm always fundraising. But I always get the same question from investors, which is, can you keep us updated, right? Send us your investor updates. And I give the same answer every time, which is, well, that's not what I do. We're building in public. You can subscribe to our investor updates on my newsletter, but I'm not going to send them to you. That's insane. I'm not going to go to you. And that works quite well because it allows us to focus on building and keeps the window shoppers away, right? It's just, hey, you can watch. If you're really interested, reach out. Everything is there for you to see. And it's made our fundraising process so much easier. We can start and close around quite quickly because it's just one email that we send out to everyone.
Absolutely. So I apologize in advance. The questions are going to be a bit all over the place. That's the nature of a Q&A, so we might be jumping around topics a tad.
Okay.
And most of them, I think most of them you can tag team. They're really addressed to both of you. So the first one, I think this is interesting. Do you have to be a technical founder? I suppose it depends on the field. That's a pretty broad question to answer. But I think there is a VC perspective to give on that as well as a startup founder perspective.
Yeah, I can give my perspective. My feeling is you should at least be a little technical. Maybe that's a spicy take, but I found it incredibly valuable to, I have a design background, but I learned front end, a little bit of back end. And a big part of the reason why is I need to know when I'm being, someone's bullshitting me. How can you possibly build something at an early stage and vet people to join your team if you have no clue what they do? So you have to know enough to know what you don't know, technically. I don't think you have to be a world-class engineer or designer, but knowing a little goes a long way.
I think my take might be a little different. But I think we're going to get at the same thing. So I don't think that you need to be a strong technical founder. I think that if you are building a technology company, that means that you need to have a really strong partner that has a background. And that partner doesn't have to be a co-founder. They can be a very, very early hire. They can be a very committed advisor who actually sits on your cap table and you have very strong commitments about what being an advisor looks like. But if I believe that if you are genuinely building the product that you know needs to exist in this world, you can figure out how to surround yourself with the right people. And so for as much as you have a strong design background and you know enough to kind of have the sniff test of are we there or not? You still are going to call in other people. It's not just a one-to-one interview. You're calling in other people to corroborate, this person has the skills, both soft skills and hard skills to be able to accomplish the job. But those early hires are so critical, so critical, because even if you are just two co-founders and you have a technical co-founder and a non-technical co-founder, you don't have every function represented, and those are important. And so do you need to hire, for example, a head of HR as your third hire? No, but you're going to bring people to the table that can help augment that team and cover those bases in the right way. And so I would say, no, you don't need to be a technical co-founder so long as you are very, very self-aware and you understand your gaps so that you can surround yourself with the right team. And that could look like a few different things. But if you know in your heart that you are meant to be the person to bring this thing to this world, do not let your lack of technical ability be the thing that stops you. And I guarantee you, the more you start pulling on these threads of trying to build it, you will gain those technical skills because you will be so frustrated that you can't get it out of your head onto the screen, onto the paper, into your phone, onto the whatever the thing is. You will be driven to learn how to build. So I think the skills can follow, but you have to be really intentional in setting it up in the beginning.
I actually changed my answer to hers.
Yeah, well, sorry, you can't take it back, but nice try.
He said no.
It's on the record, I apologize. Better luck next time. In a related question, So this person asked anonymous again, very prolific submitter of questions here, anonymous. What do you look for in founders with no previous business experience? So this might be like a first-time founder, someone who's like very new to the whole process. Maybe we can start with Katelin, because I feel like you have seen this before and you probably work with some of these folks. And what kind of advice do you give them?
So no business, I wish Anonymous was here because I have a qualifying question, which is no business experience at all. So has never had a job. So assuming like, you know, maybe 19 years old, didn't go to college, never had, you know, in some cases never worked at all, right? Like not even a Pizza Hut gig or working at, you know, the local laundromat, whatever.
I'm assuming.
That's intense.
Yeah.
To be honest, with no experience, that's a tough road to hoe. Not impossible, but a tough road to hoe. And I think I'm going to choose to answer this because they chose not to share who they are. I'm going to choose to answer the maybe some experience, maybe minimal experience, right? So maybe you're in college and you're making the decision to leave formal education to go and build something. Or maybe you didn't go to school and you're a few years out, but you've had some experience where you're interacting with other humans in a not school setting. I'm going to go there. Is that okay?
That's fine. I
Oh,
mean,
you're the moderator.
I think
You can say no.
I think absolutely no business experience is probably more rare than some. Right. So fair enough, and that'll be a more useful answer to the audience.
Okay.
In my opinion.
So, like I said, I think it's a tough road to hoe, but I don't think it's impossible. And a tough road, more specifically, sorry, I'm thinking really hard right now. It's a tough road to hoe to be a venture-backed company. It's not a tough road to hoe if you are building. And so if you are determined to get that big check from a tier 1 VC firm and you have little to no business experience, that's going to be very hard. And so you must either have an incredible depth of unique technical or experiential something to bring to the table to say, look what I have done. So I think you need to show a lot more in those early days instead of saying, I have a track record or I have these logos on my resume, which I also have a bone to pick with. But let's say, you know, as that's who you're being compared to, you can't just slide a napkin over and have a doodle of an idea and say, hey, we're gonna do this and expect millions of dollars. So I think that you have to come super correct. You need to really be able to back up what it is that you're building and your ability to bring this thing into the world. What we see more often are people who are still maybe younger in their careers, younger in their work experience, but have tried and demonstrated this ability to build, learn, try again. So maybe not hitting the winner, maybe not having a history of previous funding, but can come to the table and say, this is exactly why. And so you should take notes from Josh, because in order to do this, not only do you need to show up with something incredibly compelling, you have to be incredibly compelling, because you are going to have to, secret compliments, because you are going to have to sell the crapola out of this to everyone, to investors, to your early employees, to your customers. You have a lot to prove. And so in order to do so, you need to really, really, really come correct. Like this guy.
Yeah. Makes sense. Sorry to hone in on this, but I'm just curious. You said you have a bone to pick with logos and resumes, right? Can you? Yeah, can we dive in?
I will pick this bone, and I will moderate my language because I have a lot of choice words. For any of you who think that you must have gone to a top tier school or that you must have worked for one of the FANG companies or to have some real experience on your resume saying like, I am a valid contributing member of society and I have something to show you, I do not care. I do not want to see those. In fact, at our firm, we, even in interviewing for our own team, I don't look at resumes, I don't look at LinkedIn's, I want to hear your story. And because I have a background in HR, I was an HR executive for over a decade, I'm asking behavioral questions. I want to understand how you show up in this world. I want to understand more around your values alignment, your integrity, the people that you have chosen to surround yourself, how you make decisions. I care much more about that than seeing that shiny little logo. And that's not saying that those are bad or negative, but I'm just saying I think a lot of people, especially young builders, based on the previous question, a lot of young builders are too afraid to go and try to build because they're like, oh, I need to go and earn my stripes, or by working at Stripe, I need to go and earn that my privilege to be able to build my own thing. F that, don't do that. Build, if you know in your heart if you are a builder. So do not waste a single second playing someone else's game, making someone else money. Do it. You might try and trip and fail several times, but that experience is far more valuable than I did a tour of duty at fill in the blank. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
I like that opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that was useful to hear for a lot of people in the room. So we don't have a ton of time left, about 5 minutes. I think this will be a good one to wrap up on. Aside from face-to-face interaction, which is like the gold standard, obviously, what technology do you think is helping founders and investors network? And I want to add to that, how do you think that'll change in the future? Will we be interfacing more in the metaverse, or are there some other technologies and apps that come to mind that might help facilitate these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it's just Zoom. It's Zoom. Okay. Like my take on it. We live in
a Zoom world now.
Yeah, I've raised $35 million through Zoom. I've never had an in-person meeting. And it's convenient. Why? Because when I'm fundraising and they're asking questions that challenge me, I write it down. I can't, if I'm sitting there in a meeting with you and he has a question that's challenging, I can't be like, fucking hang on. Got it down. So I like being able to do it on Zoom. I prefer being able to do it on Zoom. The metaverse thing, maybe, I don't know, one day, but it's not fucking there now, and probably won't be soon. Yeah, I'm not gonna put on an Oculus and.
That's your bone to pick, it sounds like.
It's my bone to pick. But yeah, for me personally, it's at the end of the day, it's just as Katelin said, the thing you need to get across is who you are as a person, what your story is, why you're uniquely situated to win in a market of people that are probably smarter than you, more advantaged than you, and you can get that across on pen and paper if you need to. But for me, I don't care too much about the medium. I think it's really just about who you are as an individual.
And you would agree? Zoom is the best way to do it for the most part?
You know what? I'm super biased because my firm, we started it up in the middle of COVID, and so I actually have never taken a live pitch, ever. And I have deployed hundreds of millions of dollars in capital and feel great. And these moments of actually meeting live after you've worked together virtually for so long, they just become really lovely. I don't need to drive somewhere. I don't need to make someone come all the way to San Francisco. I mean, I will say this. I know that we don't have a ton of time. I'm going to go off on a 2-second tangent that we had backstage. I am so happy to see so many people in San Francisco. Yeah. I love this town. I've been here for over 20 years, and it makes me so happy to see people coming here and having this deep sense of community and belongingness. It is an institution to come to TechCrunch Disrupt, but you don't need to live here to participate. You don't need to be a builder here to participate. You can do that from anywhere in the world, and I really think that the pandemic helped unlock that. And so when we do come together, it's intentional, and it is by design. And so every time that I've had the pleasure of hanging out with you, Josh, it wasn't because we were talking business and trying to get to the nuts and bolts of the term sheet. Screw that too. I want to hang out. I want to sit down and have a coffee and ask about your kids and see how I can be supportive of what it is that you're building so that you can create those outsized returns. That's the focus. And so I don't need people. Stay in your jammies, everyone. Bottom down. But chill.
Yeah. I've never worn pants for a pitch. There it is.
Not a single pair.
Is that your secret? You've revealed on stage now your secret to raising tons of
pure
millions of dollars
I got some lucky underwear. But
there you go. If it works for you, then why not? So it sounds like you both believe this is kind of just the new MO, this is just the way we're going to operate now. You can be distributed and have those maybe more meaningful in-person interactions, but otherwise you don't need to get on a plane. You don't need to go to a boardroom. I
think it levels the playing field.
Yeah.
It's so intimidating to go into a VC's office, which is, some of them it's just opulent, decadent, and you're overlooking the world, Right. And then you got to sit down in this terrifying room. You're waiting for them to walk into. It's scary, but you hop on a Zoom call and it's just another call, and it feels a little bit more equal, and you can show up at your best without stumbling over your words and being nervous. So I prefer it.
absolutely.
We'll see if it stays.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, there's so much money in the video conferencing space now too. It has to.
Right.
Yeah.
We have like 30 seconds left. Maybe I can fit in one more question.
That's ambitious.
Yeah, let's see. Can you keep this brief? Your answers. So when should you start talking to VCs for funding? A funding question, because I think like that is also timely, especially given the state of the world right now. Yeah, there's a second part of that question. I'll just ask that one.
Yeah, I'll answer quickly. When you've got your story together, at the early stage especially, fundraising is storytelling. You do not have a business. Stop pretending like you have a business together. What you have is a story to tell that inspires confidence that maybe there's something here. So I suggest you start pitching once you have a story that is worth telling, and then you keep refining that story as investors are poking holes in it.
Right. I think perfectly told, because we're out of time.
Perfect.
I'm so sorry to cut you off. But
What he said.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on stage with me, and enjoy the rest of your Disrupt, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.